Welcome back. Leading for Deeper Learning with Ulster BOCES. I'm Dr. Jonah Shanker, and I'm your host. Really excited about episode 2. Today, I am joined by Sarah Dudley Lemick, Assistant Superintendent for Educator Edge and our Instructional Service Division, Peter Harris, Assistant Superintendent for Career Pathways, and Dr. Jill Berardi, Assistant Superintendent for CITL programs. Everyone here touching teaching and learning, design, and really excited about our collective thinking, our vision here, and mostly opening it up to our community and hoping that you will join us. So welcome, everybody. Before we get started, I'd just like to tell our listeners a little bit about who I have the privilege of sitting with, who I often get to sit with. I'm excited to be here with 3 of my favorite leaders. So why don't we just start off, tell us a little bit about what you currently do here at Ulster BOCES. And let's start with just why leadership matters.
I'm Jill Berardi, Assistant Superintendent. Well, leadership matters because it is important to our future and our children and families and communities.
Sarah Dudley Lemick, an assistant superintendent here at Ulster BOCES. I think leadership in schools is especially important because the leaders are the people who give permission to the educators and to the students to do what they need to do or want to do. So I think that's important.
Peter Harris, Career Pathways Assistant Superintendent. I believe that mentoring matters for each and every one of us, and we all have moments in our lives where somebody found the spark, saw the spark, lit the spark, and kind of set us on our path forward. I believe that leadership can be learned, and I believe that it's our job to help to create a context for the learning of leadership in the future.
So as I'm listening to you all, I mean, I know something that we all often talk about is regardless of what the leadership work you're engaging in a moment or as dictated by a role or job title, it's about students. It's about kids. So what are your hopes for each and every child as you think about this important work of leadership? What's at the heart of this work for you as leaders and your hope for all children?
When I think about my work over the last couple of decades and the work forward, I'm really interested in making sure that there's a bridge from this K-12 experience to a place where folks know how to experience joy, access joy, but also have the resources necessary in order to do that. So I'm concerned about the fact that we have many programs that aren't reaching employability criteria and skill sets for the people that we serve.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think in addition, I definitely think, first and foremost, I say this often, that all kids' bellies should be full. And that means that's, metaphorically speaking, that's everything, that they get what they need. And definitely somehow we spark the soul of all children, but that they leave knowing their value. And I think that's the shift I'm seeing happening, which is really awesome. Holistically, that's happening with where we're going.
I would say that I really hope that leaders can act on their love for children. I think a lot of times, especially as you move up in the education world and get a little further from the daily work with students, there's so many pressures on you from the outside that you forget. And you kind of forget what the daily life of the student is, and that students haven't changed in millennia, right? But we get so caught up in what the rules are from the state, or the rules are from the community, or the rules are from our teachers, that we forget that we want students who feel welcome, feel like they belong in our school environments. And to me, that's the real work of leadership, is making sure our students feel welcome. It's not so much about what they're learning in the classroom. It's a lot more about learning to move about in the world and feel like they have a place there.
I really appreciated hearing Jill and Sarah what you had to say, and so I think I want to just clarify that I want those things to be able to be transferable and translatable to adult lives, so that people can parent an aunt and uncle and community member in a way that sustains their filling the bellies and minds of others and feeling welcome and appreciated. And so that's why I go to the employability term.
As a former social studies teacher, I always felt like my job was not so much about to teach everything about social studies, but to give that awareness and to help students see that there's this big world out there that they can have a part in, and that maybe even people will welcome them into.
Yeah, we're rolling now, which is good. I just want to pull it back to kind of something or some of the items I heard across all three of you, right? This idea that you surfaced. We've got to maintain and ensure like basic needs are met, the human basic needs, right? And you shared that metaphor, kind of going over to you that belonging and students feel a sense of purpose is critical. All of those things laid down before we're even talking about like what do they have to learn, and then kind of to Peter, what you offered is so that when those conditions are met, and then we can talk about a body of skills or proficiencies or what have you that are going to be critical for post-secondary life, whatever that is, and to be able to grow that forward as parents and aunts and uncles and community members. And I agree with all of that. And then you stated earlier that leadership can be learned. Well, many of us went to similar schools of leadership. This wasn't the conversation that I was engaged in. Doesn't mean I didn't have wonderful mentors who I could see this in, but this wasn't the construct of leadership, the playbook that I was given to exit to do this work. So it brings me to really why we're here, which is what are the shifts that are critical from how maybe we were taught. Maybe we knew it wasn't right, or we felt that. I think we're here for that reason. And we've begun talking about this idea, this shift as leading for deeper learning. That is that in order to create these conditions in schools, it's not just about the interaction between a teacher and student, but leaders need to create the conditions for all learners, students, and adults in order for this to happen. What are those shifts around leading for deeper learning that we can allow our listeners to hear, where they can identify, oh, this is how I thought about X or how I was taught, and you all are talking about something different. Let's try to get to some of those kind of dispositions that we believe are those shifts.
I have one thing I just thought of right away. I feel like in the past, leaders, there's a lot of thought of like you're managing a lot of things, managing people. And I feel like the one thing that's shifting is, first and foremost, we have to take care of ourselves, and that we're allowed to be humans, and that relational intelligence, having relationships are going to be key. And I think that's something I've been thinking about a lot with us as systems leaders at the state. Like, we're allowed to be human beings now, and what sparks us, and if we take care of ourselves, then we can serve others. That's at a baseline. And I think we talk about emotional intelligence, but relational intelligence is really important, and how we show up and support each other. I think that's one of the shifts.
I think, Jonah, you've often talked about 20th century education being on this industrial model. I think that shift away, because the way that us at this table were taught to be leaders was about industrial, right? It was about making sure all your teachers were in their classrooms on time, that if they took a sick day, they were sick. If they were, all kinds of check boxes for where people should be and what they should be doing based on, this kind of outside picture. And I think a real shift now needs to be away from that and that manager idea to let's look at each of our folks who are under us as individual people, right? If we want our teachers to do that work, then we need to do that work as well. And so, getting away from 9 periods a day and making sure that the teachers are doing this, and this from, 8:15 until 9:10, and you have your thing on the board and you're moving through these pages or these problems, really supporting the freedom and the expertise and knowledge of the teachers and trusting them to move forward with what they think is best for students. I think that can really shift a lot of what we want to see in schools and move away from people wanting to follow the rules in the same way or being caught up in following rules.
For me, a shift in teaching folks about global competence and what that means, and how to be globally competent, process and project-based learning that includes protocols. Specifically, I often talk about lean manufacturing principles and learning about them and what it did for me as a late career educator to think differently in that way. I think moving towards a mastery-based model, a mastery learning model, is an important shift for us in order to get to the place of deeper leading and deeper learning, which to me, from Sarah Fine and Hal Mehta's work, is a definition that is simplified and reduced down to the ability to master skills and content, the ability to respond and think and act creatively, and then to be able to have identity, to be able to see yourself in the work. Those are some of the shifts I'm thinking about now.
Right. Kind of the threads throughout all of your responses that resonate with, I think, our collective beliefs. Relationships are priority. That interaction is important. That flexibility and leaning into, we have experts, allowing them to do what they do, but also to take risks, make mistakes, not based on compliance, but on iterative process to get better. And that idea of kind of embedding, Peter, in what I heard, the same priorities that we hope are true for the shifts in the classroom to be inherent in adult learning spaces, that we lean into relationships and project work and process work rather than rote industrial systems and structures that, again, the same structures that asked us to file and rank and sort students by nature allow us to file, rank, and sort adults. So those leadership changes.
I just wanted to add, you just made me think of one thing I see a huge shift just in our experience as leaders. There's not one right answer, which I feel like that has definitely been a shift, even working with our leadership team. We're like playing alongside with them. We're designing. And it used to be there was an answer, even as a leader. I'm going to give you this answer. And I think that's one of the things that I think is beautiful about the work we're doing. We're able to have voice everywhere. We're alongside working. Yes, we're leading, but we're also allowing for many options. And I don't think kids, they're always like, let me get that answer right. How do I get that A? So I even feel like that for our leaders. I think it's pretty important that we're changing the paradigm. We're changing the mindset.
Okay. So let me shift gears because we got a couple things coming down the pike that we're going to have the responsibility, the opportunity to play in the sandbox with a couple of small initiatives that are coming down. Blue Ribbon Commission, as we know, a set of recommendations from the Board of Regents adopted, and those recommendations given over to the New York State Education Department and turned back through a document which is the beginnings of a timeline New York inspires. But this embedded in that the portrait of a graduate as well. And then we've got some other large stuff that's happening kind of peripheral to that, or will kind of cross over in the nexus of all of this. But I want to focus on those large shifts. We will dive into Portrait of a Grad in a second, a little bit deeper. But overall, as you think about your work as a leader, your many decades of doing this work in different arenas, and then where we are now. How are you feeling? Not necessarily about the details of them, but as a leader in this time, the opportunity of this change around all of this, what I believe to be revolutionary shift. How are you all feeling about what we're looking down the hallway at?
I'm really excited about the opportunity for us to center the student experience in a very different way and to turn to community, industry, stakeholder groups in our area to find out, what are the skills that they think really matter most and align the most with the expectations to get our young people toward the goals really that Jill and Sarah talked about for the K-12 experience. How do we get there? Every time I'm out and about shopping in a restaurant, at a community meeting, folks know what they want for kids. And the way in which we operate schools are providing a ramp towards a model that was for economic and war dominance of other eras and doesn't really fit today's expectations for having a full belly, a full heart, and a full mind.
My experience in education as a student was a little bit different. I didn't have things like Regents exams and all of that. So when I came here to teach, it was a little bit jarring that test as a secondary person was so important to how I constructed my curriculum, how I did everything. I was a strong believer in what we thought was project-based learning then, long time ago. But it was kind of hard to fit that into, okay, but students need to answer 50 multiple choice questions about all of world history from the beginning, till now. So to me, it's very exciting because it's going to allow students and teachers and other educators to play and to dig in and, really explore a passion for something or have an exposure to things that maybe might be more interesting to them than going through, and I'll just stay in social studies since that's my world of, having to follow this timeline of history and making sure that I, cover the unification of Italy, for example, of one, right? Like that was not the most exciting lesson that I ever taught, and kids weren't as excited. But sometimes when I could stand up in front of the room and just talk about something I knew a lot about, kids were really excited. Or if they were working on a project, they had that opportunity to dig in and learn deeply about a topic that maybe they wouldn't have chosen, but because it was there, they got to dig in. I think that's being that decoupling of some of the Regents' requirements and things will allow students to enjoy learning.
Yeah.
I'll just add and allow, like you're saying, the adults to have some fun.
Yeah.
I'm really psyched up about the future of this. I think I had to take those Regents, and I hated taking those Regents. And, that's at a time where if you got good grades, you were, perceived as, intelligent and all of that. And years ago, the multiple intelligence, I feel like it's awesome that we're getting back to like what lights your soul, what sparks your soul. And of course, there's other things that you have to learn. And but that we are going to allow for the playground to now be like, what do you love? I mean, they're with us for 13, 14 years. And that's why they need to laugh and have fun and tinker and do all those things so that they can go and enjoy and have the freedom through employment to be able to travel and do that. So you do have to be employed and do good things. So I think it's...
And Jill, I'm so excited you brought that up because I think expanding beyond the four walls of an individual classroom is something that's going to happen through this shift and change. And whether that's through community service opportunities, volunteerism opportunities, internships, externships, just projects that we're doing for a greater good with an audience that reaches a little bit higher, an audience that is capable of giving high quality feedback that's going to be meaningful to the individual about the passion and skills and identity that they put into the work.
And I know we're not diving deeply into technology, but I think technology will contribute to that because we now have the opportunity that even if a district can't afford to send all of their students broadly out, we have technology that at least allows them to see and experience and talk and have exposure, even if they're not physically leaving a building. And these changes, again, give districts a little more freedom to do some of those kinds of experiences as well.
So I want to kind of hold that piece for one second, and we'll come back to that. As a BOCES and an arm of the state, part of our work is to support these shifts and changes in the districts we serve. And again, we know as a state, and partly because of the ability to connect more easily with technology, to be able to share out with the field more broadly. So I want to go kind of first to your leadership work, and how, as we think about, again, the magnitude of this shift, the timeline that's currently in front of us, which is this phased in kind of 5-year process. There are things like revisions of standards. There are the acknowledgement of this new framework around portrait of a grad. There is the decoupling of Regents assessments from graduation. We're talking about credits and how those align and stack and flexibility there. We're talking about multiple pathways, which then includes other mechanisms of assessment to show proficiency, because everybody agrees we need to know that students are doing something, but there are lots of other ways besides the Regents exam to assess that. And folks are going to turn to us and say, how do we do this? Your role and your leadership, how do we train educators, leaders specifically, to incorporate these leadership dispositions, leading for deeper learning, these changes, so that we are not overlaying these shifts on a foundation that this initiative aims to shift. So how are you thinking about your leadership, which again is collective, but has a specificity around this professional learning arm? And then we'll talk a little bit about the role of student-based programs in your work next.
Well, I think whenever we talk transformation, right, because this is a complete change. This is, people don't even have a picture of what this might look like, many of them in their head. So I think part of the leadership aspect of it is really collaboration and talking and being able to think through, instead of focusing just on our one district, being able to look as a collective group from a leadership perspective at, well, what does this mean? What does this look like for students? How are we going to think about this as we move forward? And I think, the part of it that has everyone, well, a little maybe unsure is that, we're moving ahead with some things that they put in place, like new science standards, new science Regents exams, at the same time that we're going to be decoupling Regents exams. And, so part of this is offering a space for people to talk that through and to think it through and to understand, our role with my specialists, with my people, and our connection to the state. Okay, this is how the state is talking about this. This is not something that needs to be scary, right? And again, really reinforcing that idea of giving permission and trying out and failing and going back to the drawing board and thinking about it again. But all of this I don't think you can do without also talking about regionalization, without talking, that it's all part of a big picture. And so our work will really be focused on again, allowing people to dream, which I think is what the state has given us the permission to do about what we want it to be. And then as we're thinking about that as a region, what do we want that to look like? And then building structures around, what will our teachers need? How do we think about even just decoupling their brain from the Regents exams? There are some teachers that are, extremely excited about that. There are others that they are feeling very insecure and not knowing how they're going to move forward. So, how can my specialists think about ways to bring them into this PBL model? And one of the things that we've started to do is as we're offering our professional learning opportunities, we're thinking about them in a PBL kind of model, so that it's not so much that they have a product at the end of it, but they're getting an experience as an adult learner in what PBL can look like. Experiencing a launch, iterating, tuning, and then sharing their learning. And I mean, what is a more authentic audience than the students that they're facing every single day, day after day? So, that's one way that we're really thinking about that. And again, and definitely doubling down on the idea of crew and connection. Whether a district chooses that crew is going to be their thing, giving, again, teachers and leaders permission to work on that SEL part, to work on the relationship aspects of what we do. I think there's a lot of districts that are doing that. And I believe that there are very few teachers out there who don't love students and want to do what they believe is best for students. So how do we help them picture it differently? And I think that by following some of the things that we've been doing, they might actually see more success and feel less like they're treading water all the time, trying to, hit every student, hit every teacher, and we've talked a lot about, when we already mentioned it, this session of leaders have to lead in the way that we want teachers to teach. So if we're using faculty meetings simply to give out information about what's happening in the next month, that's not going to change anything, right? So being able to take your faculty meetings, being able to take your curriculum meetings and refashion, relook at, and we're going to have to change schedules. So that's part of the support that we'll be doing from a leadership level too, of what do our schedules need to look like? And that's not only secondary. Our elementary school schedules are very, very rigid.
Yeah.
And students are being pulled out of their classrooms. Very seldom does an elementary school teacher have more than 40 minutes, maybe an hour, with all of their students in their classroom at one time. That's not a way that you can build community or engage in PBL kinds of experiences. So, helping teachers and educators work through that is important.
So I think, out of all that you share, which is a lot of important and what I believe to be spot on stuff. I think what I heard that's resonating with me is that we got to hold space and we got to allow folks to dream, to be able to picture what this could look like or imagine, right? It's hard to design towards something that you may not have had the opportunity to see, or at least be able to imagine collectively. And I think that lays into the timeline and the approach that we're seeing from the state. There have been other initiatives that are rolled out and says, here's this and you're going to do all this stuff, rather than here's this outcome we want to get to and here's these phases and we're going to allow this design work, this iterative process to happen. And so I'm excited that that's the way that we're going at through our professional learning arm to do with our leaders and teachers and also do the modeling. In that, the shifts and there's certainly an economic impact on these changes, but the stuff that you talked about that we need to do is mindset work. And is there some cost to it? Sure, but there's not that same cost to doing that work, right? Like how we're shifting our thinking to get ready to even be able to do this work, and that our systems can receive the work. Here at Ulster BOCES, we have this other amazing opportunity, which is we have student-based programs, and both of your leadership work transcends not just the direct work with students. However, we have this amazing opportunity to model what's possible at a leadership level in our classrooms for some incredibly diverse learners that we share in the county. And so I first want to hear from both of you, what is the work that you've already been at, right? We've been on this road for some time. in terms of your leadership teams, right? Like shifting their work, because I know that there's alignment that says like, we can do classroom work, but until we have these leadership teams who have alignment, are speaking a common language, that are pulling in the same direction of this vision and change of leading for deeper learning has to happen before deeper learning for students. So talk to me a little bit about how you continue to step into building, mentoring and supporting your growing leadership teams to do what you're already doing, and now knowing what's coming down the road. I think we're teed up real nicely to continue that work to take it to the next level.
So we start our meetings with crew, my leadership team, and conclude with crew as well. And so that we make sure that we are starting with community and seeing each other's faces and hearing from one another, and concluding very much that way as well, so that we know that we're either resolved or at least checking in. But larger part of the work is that we're consistently talking about professional, personal, and technical skill training throughout our programs, and that the fact that professional and personal skills really should be in alignment throughout all of our programs. It's the technical pieces that shift depending upon the program at our Phoenix Academy, at our PTech, or within our career and technical education programs. So we also talk a lot about global competence, and that just briefly is thinking about investigating the world, a problem, a product, a thing, recognizing perspectives of everybody involved, communicating findings and taking action. And we use that too within our work. We kind of try to reset to that. We talk about our process and project-based learning. And as Sarah defined it before, from launch to presentation of learning in all things that we're doing. So there's just some of the things that we're using to model, and to the point that you made before, Jonah, making sure that we are demonstrating as learners first the model which we hope our kids get to experience in each of their programs through the work of the teachers and our partners.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I mean, we definitely, our foundation is, building our relationship and making sure that I think we're honest with each other. I don't think you can fake values. So I think, which very interesting, we align with all of our values. And my team, they believe in this. They believe in the work. We work with extreme users. Our children are beautiful. They have a lot of needs. And to show up every single day and be able to serve the children, be able to serve the adults, again, you have to take care of yourselves. So we also do crew. We circle up. We certainly model. We've been using, our, design principles. But I really do feel like, it's like a push and apply. You certainly learn from them, but I also have to remember, like, I'm trying to build their capacity as well. So I have to make sure I'm building my own capacity. What does that mean? We have different, new principles and that type of thing. But at the very end, at the core, I believe we come together and we all have the same value. We really want these children and the families and the communities to have something good. We want them to have some type of joy. And I think the schools show that, our schools show that. But more so, kids should come and play. They should be hanging out and playing. And, recess is like 30 minutes in different places. They need to get outside. So I think it's just working alongside the teachers, and it is mindset. You talked about, mind shift, and that's every day, working together and listening and making sure that whatever they're nervous about, whether it's teachers or principals or admin, I got to hear you. Where are we at? So I think it's checking in, and it goes back to, again, you can't fake this. You either want to do this and do this work, and you have the heart and soul for it, or it's going to be a rough ride. That's awesome. What I think right now in education.
So, in all of your responses, whether working with leaders who work directly with students or leaders who work with teachers or teachers, learning is what has emerged for me. Right? We're talking about not what we've done to learning, but learning as a gift that we don't have to develop or do anything to, that we're wired to do, and it includes play and mastery and getting outside for everybody. And it includes finding this little piece of information or area of passion and going really, really deep, and not wanting to do other things. All of the things that we've said that probably are comments in our report cards as we know them, set the parameters for what learning really isn't, right? Trouble staying on task, can't focus, too much socializing. I mean, all of those things are actually, when things are going well, what should happen. So I believe, right, like we're talking about mindset and heartset work. And I'm not sure that the constraints of the system, they've jammed up the mind. We can't even get to the heart. And so I'm hearing in all of this, like part of our work is, even though we call it relationship work, right? It's the connection work to undo the constraints, to get at the heart work, to actually just let us do what we're wired for. It's pretty simple. Let's get back to learning. And I think one of the things that we've talked about in the shift between deeper learning and leading for deeper learning is what you all pointed out. It's really not different. What we're trying to create is the same environment in the kindergarten class, the 6th grade class, the 12th grade class or AP class, or an adult faculty meeting, or superintendent's conference day, or a conference day, or a grad school class, right? Like if we embodied those pieces, I think we'd be better off. So this leads us to kind of this last section before we kind of wrap up and take a little bit of a peek into where we might go, which is we've got this portrait of a graduate. I love that work. We've talked about that type of work for a while. It's the other side of academics. And we have our own skills and dispositions, but the words are very similar, if not the same, across that. Tell me a little bit, and we've talked about this as we think about, and I know we share that before we can get to portrait of a learner or graduate, we got to get to portrait of a leader. All right. And it's kind of a little bit repetitive, but just a minute of, again, what I just spoke about, learning being innate, these qualities, which are the human side of things that I think we know and need to be prioritized if we have a shot at doing the work that needs to happen in our world. How just a little bit of feeling on that body of work. It's very different for a collective system, not necessarily for what we've been talking about that excites you about that portrait of a leader work.
I mean, one of the things that, as you were saying, that it's separate from the academic, or it's the other side. I mean, to me, it's all intertwined. I don't think we should or can separate what's in the portrait of a graduate versus the academic work, because to get to the academic work, you need to have critical thinking skills. You need to be literate across content areas. You need to have global competencies. You need to have social emotion. You need to be able to interact with other folks and to really dig deep. So, and I'm a little bit, one of my fears, I guess I'll say, of this new work is that it becomes institutionalized and it becomes check boxes, because again, we've all been trained that we need to do that. We need to check boxes, and this isn't checkbox work. This is work that can look very different in different settings. That because we're all unique in how we go about the world, that what literate across content areas looks like for me might be very different than perhaps a student in Jill's environment, or a student in upstate New York versus downstate, like whatever it might be. And, I hope that we can keep some of those definitions broad, so that it doesn't become, well, you have to do this, 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 and this to show that you are literate. It doesn't seem like that's what the state is doing, but I just feel like when we have to institutionalize something, when it's across a broad swath, in this case, a state, the natural tendency for efficiency is to do that. And so that's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot of okay, we have to define it because we have to be able to show that students are competent in these areas, but then how do we do that without damaging the message of it, I guess.
I think when I think about portrait of a leader, the idea to be able to design that out as teams or, New York State. But if we're thinking right here, I think it's an awesome opportunity to go away from, it used to be in my head, a leader is like, I'm good at this, I'm going to do it solo, my ego's involved. And the way I'm starting to think about portrait of a leader, and I'm sure it'll have its own domains, but partly is that, as a community, we'll do this better, and that's life.
I want to thank you all for listening to Leading for Deeper Learning, our podcast here at Ulster BOCES. I was so excited to have the conversation with some of my leadership team here, really just thinking about how systematically we're thinking about leading and learning for deeper learning, a construct that is going to serve us well as we think forward to the needed changes in New York State and beyond. Blue Ribbon Commission, our Portrait of a Graduate, New York Inspires, regionalization, all concepts that are going to have to move from concepts down to the ground floor. And really what I'm so excited that we got to hear from some of our folks who touch teachers and schools and leaders, as well as students in our programs. And so a little bit as you continue to tune in to future episodes, what to expect, we're going to continue to move down deeper and closer to the classroom. We're going to take a look at what does this mean, deeper leading and learning in career and technical education, in pathways programs, in adult education. We're going to take a look at what this means in K-12 special ed programming and therapeutic programs. We're going to take a look at what this means in non-instructional spaces. This work isn't just for schools. This is for adults to be connected, to have purpose, to have belonging, to step in with their expertise. And all of this, as we begin to move through the year to our culminating event, our second annual Deeper Learning Conference, a global conference that'll take place here in New York, summer 2025. And as we turn past that, we're gonna engage in activating voices, bringing guests on so that all community members, parents, business owners, stakeholders, students can begin to understand the work that's ahead of us here in New York State. It is critical that this becomes a platform where you can tune in and understand what does this mean for you, what does this mean for your child, and most importantly, what are the outcomes that are different from where we are now that we all know we need to get to. So this is about elevating the amazing work that happens already in schools and bringing that forward. This is about letting go of work that we know or ways of knowing that don't serve us well. And exploring opportunities where we're going to be designing new. So keep tuning in to our podcast here at Ulster BOCES, Leading for Deeper Learning. I'm Dr. Jonah Shanker, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.